All right. Welcome to a Warhammer 1v1 ladder match between myself and Couscous 2000. I'm playing the Dark Elves. Couscous 2000 is playing the High Elves. Gonna go over army lists really quickly. In the back, we have the Fireborn, which you often see in the High Elf roster. Allarielle the Radiant, again, pretty much a staple pick. A Sun Dragon, that's maybe a bit of a deviation against the norm. And then what Couscous 2000 has brought is two nobles, both of which are on a chariot. So the noble on a chariot is a fucking strong choice against a lot of matchups, and it could theoretically be problematic for the Dark Elves as well, because Dark Elves struggle at dealing with individual entity type of characters, like like a Boris Todbringer on a Griffin or things like that, because they don't have any hero equivalents that can really fight them. And if I brought Malkeith on a cold one, then I would have had great difficulty catching them. And Malkeith on the cold one is probably a very common choice for most Dark Elf players. So I'm guessing that's what Couscous 2000 thought I was going to bring. Fortunately, I did not do that, and I brought an extra contingent of cavalry because I knew going against the High Elves, the High Elves tend to rely on their large to win. Like if you look where they've spent their points in their army, Noble is about maybe 1,300 points or 1,400 points times two. That's close to 3K. Allarielle probably another 2K. That's about 5K. Sun Dragon another 2K more or less. We're looking at close to 7K. Fireborn another 2K almost. That's 9K. So 9K of this High Elf roster is on large elite units. 9K out of a 12.5K roster, and if you add in the two Illyrian Reavers, those are also large. So that's like 12, 13K of this High Elf roster. Sorry, that's about 11K of a 12.5K of this High Elf roster that has been spent on large, which is why I think if you're playing, and I feel like this is not a crazy unconventional High Elf roster. This is pretty standard stuff that you're going to see. So that's why I think you need at least 3, probably 4 units of cold one or of cavalry to counter that. And usually I go with 1 to pin it, and then the other 3 are there to actually do the damage and try and put out a hurt to these guys. I did bring Crone Hellebron on the horse, who will be hunting for those nobles on a chariot and will do a much better job of it than Malkeith could. And I think the big risk with her is that she just gets shot up by High Elf archers, so it's a bit of a gamble in that sense, but I would try and screen off these Illyrian Reavers as much as possible. And I do have the Sorceress of Beasts, who, if needed, could add a bit of tankiness to support my forces. Finally, I do have 2 Harganeth Executioners who are flanked by 2 Corsairs, because the Corsairs are faster than the Harganeth Executioners, so the idea is that they can kind of wrap around, and if I had to deal with archer lines, they would be able to do that. And then, a couple Bleak Swords in the front. And the cavalry, all I wanted to do was use it defensively. And I think you have to remember, if you ever play Dark Elves, Dark Elves have defensive cav. So their job is to keep your front line fighting. The High Elves have offensive cav. Their job is to initiate, tag stuff, and then get the fuck out. So I think there's a big difference between the two factions, just from a top level approach. But with that said, let's get into the action. So initial army is moving up. The Illyrian Reavers are going to be able to take the first shots at my army. I don't have any Dark Riders or any missile play really at all that would be able to counter them. But I do have Bleak Swords, and they are going to just try and soak the damage and screen out these Illyrian Reavers with their high missile block chance. One of the nobles on the right hand side is going to start peeling into the first unit of Bleak Swords and the Illyrian Reavers. This is how you can tell I'm playing a good opponent, because he actually uses the Illyrian Reavers to get in a sneaky first charge there, and it did a good amount of damage. I did try and counter with the Cold One Knights. They were not sleeping, but he wisely pulls them through his unit of spears, so that's an excellent bait and switch from my opponent. Meanwhile, the noble has gotten into maybe a bit of a dicey situation. He came close to Hellebron and then realized he was in the wrong neighborhood and pulled out, but the Cold One Knights are going to pin him, and Hellebron's not going to be sleeping for long. She is hunting him down, but unfortunately she does get tied up in some spears and some some white lines of trace, so that's going to be tough for her. On the other flank, the Fireborn have come in, but I've been really on top of that, and I've chased them off with both the Cold One Knights and the Slaanesh Harvesters. Now, in terms of the Doomfire Warlocks, there are two different variants if you go with the Doomfire Warlocks. There's the Regiment of Renown one, the Slaanesh Harvesters, which have access to Word of Pain and Soul Stealer, and then there's the other one which has Doombolt and Word of Pain. So it's maybe a tough decision. Like, when do I use Slaanesh Harvesters? When do I use the other one? And I think in the high elf matchup, because you're often going to find very elite, top tier, heavy hitting, damage dealing infantry, the Slaanesh Harvesters are the better pick. In most matchups, I prefer the regular version, but against the high elves, if you can debuff that melee attack of the Fireborn, you are in business. So these guys, the Slaanesh Harvesters plus the Cold One Knights, are going to get onto these Fireborn and debuff the shit out of them, and turn a fight where normally the Fireborn would be able to do a ton of work into my favor. Meanwhile, the Star Dragon is going to put a breath attack on the Hargoneth Executioners and do a load of damage just as a noble chariot comes in and smashes into the face of the Hargoneth Executioners. Meanwhile, on the left flank, the spears are buckling from the pressure of the Corsairs and the Bleak Swords, so it's pandemonium everywhere. But I have been able to sort of win the far right side, and I'm going to start curling around into the back and these and maybe break off these white lines of trace who are wavering. There's a lot of pressure here that I'm putting on the front line, so that's going to start to crack and crumble soon, and it will be up to Allarielle with her Faw's protection and Earthblood to try and figure out what and where she can keep online. The nobles are cycle charging in and out. They are likely going to break off my Bleak Swords, and Hellebron has to make a decision. She has to decide, okay, am I going to go after this noble? Am I going to go after this noble? Am I going to go after the Sun Dragon, Allarielle, the Fireborn? There's so many targets she has to chase after, and she's kind of very busy running from one to the next. This is why I say, like, Dark Elves, they kind of struggle with individual entities like this. So that's why I think you really need to bring a couple extra Cold One Knights if you're going against the High Elves. So the nobles are sneaking out of there. Hellebron did tap one, but in the end, I guess she decided it was better off to go out, to ignore the noble for a minute and just make sure that she could secure this fight, because there's a ton of points wrapped up in this fight. Allarielle the Radiant has come down. You've got the Sun Dragon. You've got the Fireborn. And so this is where I need Hellebron to be active most, because I need to win this fight. If I lose to the Fireborn, if I lose to the Dragon, and they break off this unit of Cold One Knights, that's going to hurt like hell. But I do have Gazer Cane. I've cast Weisfan's Wild Form, so plus 25% weapon damage and extra armor. So these Cold One Knights, they're in tough. Let's see what, but their stats are going to go up. So the 120 armor, 57 melee attack, 48 weapon damage with bonus versus large. So they are going to hurt pretty bad. These units that they're on, and then now with Hellebron in here, look at her just give the business to this Sun Dragon. So Hellebron, let's see. Yeah, she's up to 710 weapon damage now, so that is foolish amount of damage. She's going to put the Sun Dragon into a bag, and then with the Sun Dragon gone, she can rotate over onto Allarielle, and if Allarielle chops, then that's going to shift the balance bar into our favor a lot. And Allarielle on the Pigeon over here, the Great Eagle, does not have a ton of mass, so she is going to have a little bit of trouble pathing out of these Cold One Knights. Now, what I should have done here is I should have regrouped them around her to try and block her even more from getting away, because what's going to happen now is she's going to go out there and she's going to rally and come back. And I knew, so here, this was a tough decision for me. I knew I could take Crone Hellebron and I could basically escort her off of the map, right? Like, because there's the edge of the map right here, and if I took Allarielle off, that could help a lot. But I was like, oh, she's still full health. She's got a lot of fighting in her left, and Allarielle's almost dead. So I think it's too many resources for me to commit to chasing Allarielle off. I still have those two nobles on a chariot that I need to deal with, one of which is in here, the other of which is, where did he go? Oh, I guess he broke off. So I guess he got bogged down in infantry as my opponent was focusing his micro over here. But the front line has gone decisively in the Dark Elves' favor, as it should. So things are starting to look up for me. Balance bar shifted pretty heavily. Hellebron is going to get in on this noble on the chariot, and if we can just break off this noble. Oh, look at that chunk of damage coming in there. Break him off, then that's going to pretty much solidify the game for us. So I'm not sure if Allarielle's cast frost protection on him. It doesn't look like it. One thing that the chariots do suffer from is lower melee defense. So he's only at 26 melee defense. So even with Foz, he would only go up to about 50. And Hellebron, her melee attack is so high. So pretty much every hit she puts on is going to go on, is going to go through on this noble. Plus she has the Accursed Blade. So down goes the noble, and victory is in our grasp. So I will just wrap it up, and we'll go to the end screen. So what are my thoughts on this matchup? I mean, I'm sure Couscous has had a lot of success running the double noble and Allarielle build. I think Allarielle and the nobles, in my opinion, are both very OP units, and they are fantastic against certain factions. I would say they're great against dwarfs. They can be very good against dark elves. Had I brought Malkeith, I would have really struggled in this matchup. So I'm glad I brought Hellebron. So maybe I just got a little bit lucky on the army select. And then I think maybe Couscous could have dropped one of the nobles and just got an extra unit of cav or something that could have helped him support in that fight with the Cold One Knights, or maybe some Sisters of Avalorn to shoot in on some high value targets. I didn't have to worry about Coron Hellebron being sniped out too much because the Illyrian Reavers never found their way into position to really be able to shoot her. And I think maybe even some regular High Elf archers could have done the job here. But, if you are going to play High Elves, they do have a ton of access to really elite units, and it's super tempting to bring them. I just think, if you do go that route, your opponents might expect it. So, maybe you don't want to go to the extremes, and maybe drop one of these nobles, maybe go with some regular dragon princes instead of the fireboard. And 2 units of dragon princes is probably better than one unit of fireborn and a noble, and you'd still have points left over for almost a Sisters of Avalorn pick on top of that. With that said, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed and got some ideas for your matches. Cheers, bye.